Hallo, wir sind die Schüler und Schülerinnen der neuen Mittelschule Ansfelden.
Weil wir 70 Jahre Frieden in Österreich feiern, haben wir viele demokratiepolitische Bausteine im Unterricht bearbeitet. Die 3. und 4. Klassen besuchten die Tötungsanstalt Schloss Hartheim und das KZ Mauthausen.
Im März wurde die Ausstellung Schubladendenken im Rathaus Ansfelden eröffnet. Geholfen hat uns die Plattform Wieder das Vergessen.
Der Schriftsteller Ludwig Laher hat uns aus seinem Buch Herzfleischentartung vorgelesen und erzählt.
Beim Gedenken 2015 erzählte die Ansfeldnerin Leopoldine Grünwald, was sie als Kind gesehen hat.
Am 5. Mai 2015 lernten wir Überlebende des Todesmarsches von Mauthausen nach Gunskirchen kennen.
Bei diesem Todesmarsch kommen sie auch bei der Kremsbrücke in Ansfelden vorbei.
Mai 2015, ABC Ansfelden, Besuch von den Zeitzeugen, Überlebenden des Todesmarsches Michael Kraus und Mischa Grünwald. Als uns die Zeitzeugen besuchen kamen, haben wir erst begriffen, wie gut es uns eigentlich geht. Beide kamen mit ihren Frauen. Einer zeigte uns sogar einen Kurzfilm seines Enkels. Sie zeigten uns Bilder aus ihrer Kindheit, von ihrer Lebensgeschichte und vom KZ.
Our family was asked to assemble at the railroad station in Theresienstadt. This was now in December of 1943, and we were assembled at the railroad station. We were put on open trains. We were put on cattle trains. They were not open. We were put on cattle trains designed for transporting cattle. You can see the typical cattle trains there in the picture, and we traveled about 70 or 80 people in each car without any seats. This was just a plain floor in the car, and we had 1 bucket of water and 1 bucket for human waste in the car. We traveled for 2.5 days without food. We only had water, and we arrived at this platform 2.5 days later, which was the Auschwitz concentration camp. We traveled in 2 transports. I'm not sure that the transports were the same day or if the next transport was the next day, but there were 2 transports. This was the middle of December, and there was a total of 5,000 people in these 2 transports, so roughly 2,500 people in each transport. This was referred to later on as the December transport. The first transport was approximately 4 months before ours, which was referred to as a September transport. Why I'm mentioning these 2 transports of roughly 10,000 people is because this is a very critical part of the story. What makes this story critical with the 10,000 people from Theresienstadt is that we found out after the war that the Nazi regime was told that the International Red Cross, headquartered in Geneva, was going to inspect some of the concentration camps, particularly the ghetto of Theresienstadt. Theresienstadt was prepared for the Nazi inspection. The Nazis, for the International Red Cross inspection, the Nazis fixed up Theresienstadt. They put food in the stores, and they fixed up the roads, and they allowed some of the Jews to play music in some of the music areas, like some of the bars that used to be bars or drinking establishments. So they made it look like this was a very comfortable place for the Jewish families. The Nazis were concerned that there were not enough Jews in Theresienstadt, and that they were going to be asked by the International Red Cross, where is the rest of the people that came here in the last year or year and a half. Therefore, they decided that they are going to keep transport, the September transport and the December transport, the total of 10,000 people. They decided they are going to establish a special camp in Auschwitz in case the Nazis and the International Red Cross investigates and wants to see more of the people that left Theresienstadt. So they used it as a possible explanation that we don't have any more than 7,000 or 8,000 Jews in Theresienstadt, but we have shipped them to Auschwitz and they are doing very well. We will show you where they are. They are in a family camp in Auschwitz. We found out very quickly that Auschwitz was an extermination camp and that there were 4 gas chambers in the new part of the camp, which was the Auschwitz segment of the camp. Typical view of the surrounding part of Auschwitz, where you could see nothing but the high voltage electrical wire. And this is a view of Auschwitz from the air. This is an air view. Every 2 lines of barracks is a separate camp. Every two lines of barracks, every pair is a separate camp. This is what most of the children look like. This is a head doctor, one of the head doctors responsible for the 10,000 people that came in in the September and December transport from Theresienstadt. Dr. Mengele. On the second day, after being put in one of the barracks with my father and brother, we were separated from my mother, who was in the female barracks. On the second day, I tried to visit my mother, which I did, and I met, accidentally, I ran into a situation where I saw, when I was leaving my mother's barrack, I saw a small room with a woman painting a picture. She was an artist, and when Dr. Mengele found out that she was an artist, he made her document faces of gypsy women and men. The Nazis did not like gypsies. They considered gypsies to be subhuman, so not worthy of life, so basically they killed most of them, and Dr. Mengele wanted to document their appearance before he killed them. Through the artist Dina, that I became friendly with, she introduced me to her boyfriend, a young man who was her boyfriend and who was in charge of the 10,000 people in the Jewish family camp. Dina's boyfriend, Willie, was in charge of the camp. He was not Jewish, he was German. He was a German political prisoner. Willie asked me if I was interested in working for him as his Läufer. So I was doing errands for him, and of course I said yes, I would work with him as a Läufer. In March of 1944, which was about 7 or 8 months after we got there, the September transport that came in, that Dina came in from Theresienstadt, was liquidated. They were all killed in the gas chamber. In July, that following July, approximately 4 months later, we, the remaining 5,000 people in the camp, almost 5,000 people, were asked to go through a medical inspection, what was called a selection. My brother, who had a problem with one of his legs and he was limping, he was told by Dr. Mengele, to go to the left side of the table, of the examination table where Mengele was sitting, and I was also asked by Mengele to go on the left side of the table. I noticed a group of older boys, 13 and 14 years old boys, on the right side of the table. When I was put to the left side of Dr. Mengele's table with 200 or 300 other children, many of them 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. Suddenly, Willie, the man that I work for as a Läufer, came out from the crowd very quickly and pulled me by my shoulder and moved me into the group on the right of the table, group of older children. I realized at that point, I saw the whole picture at this point, where I realized that Willie just saved my life. I was able to say goodbye to my mother and brother. My mother decided to stay with my brother. My father was transported or moved to another camp nearby. So both my father and I left the camp, the family camp, and everybody left behind went to the gas chamber approximately 5 days later, on the 11th of July. My mother smuggled this letter out to my father, who was in another location in Auschwitz. She gave it to a guard, and this is a copy of part of the letter. This letter now is at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. This picture shows some of the bodies being burned outside. These were bodies that came out of the gas chambers, and the crematoria were not big enough to handle the number of dead bodies, so they burned them outside. This shows some of the clothing of the prisoners that were undressed before they went into the gas chamber. In the middle of December of that following year, in 1944, we were evacuated from the camp and went on a death march for 2 days. We walked and ended up in a small town called Gliwice, which was in Poland. We were put on open trains and transported to Mauthausen in open coal car trains. You all know that Mauthausen was an international camp. There were a lot of different nationalities in Mauthausen, and it was a very difficult camp to survive. Everybody was starving to death. Many people had to work very hard in the quarry. So it was a very dangerous camp. People either died from disease, from typhoid fever, or they died from hunger, or they died because they had to work too hard and then simply could not do the work that they had to do. This is the quarry. This is what the prisoners looked like when the American Army liberated Mauthausen on the 5th of May of 1945. Another typical appearance of a 14-year-old boy when he was liberated in Mauthausen. This was the pit of dead people in Mauthausen, because again the crematoria in Mauthausen could not handle the number of dead people. Frank Rice, who was the head of the Mauthausen camp, they were transported to Melk. A few days after we were in Mauthausen, about a week or week and a half after being in Mauthausen, we were transported to Melk. In Melk, we worked in the kitchen, mostly peeling potatoes, and after being in Melk for about 2.5 months, we were moved back to Mauthausen, and then we ended up in a day or two. After a day or two back in Mauthausen, we ended up in what was called a Zeltlager, which was a tent camp, which was right next to the main camp of Mauthausen. From the tent camp where we were for a week, which was an impossible camp to survive, almost impossible camp to survive, we were walked on another death march, approximately 60 kilometers to the camp, to the Gunskirchen camp, which was deep in the woods in Gunskirchen. Gunskirchen had no running water and no kitchen, so we were given a piece of bread in the morning and a little bit of soup, and that was our food for the whole day. The first 3 days we had received some food, but then the next 3 or 4 days we had no food delivery at all. In Gunskirchen we slept outside because there was not enough barracks in Gunskirchen to contain all the prisoners. Gunskirchen was full of dead people, and was when the Americans came in actually when they walked in on the 4th of May of 1945, They had trouble differentiating or recognizing who was alive and who was dead. We were liberated on the 5th day of May in 1945, and this picture was taken by the 71st Division, 71st group of the Patton's Army on the 4th or 5th day of May of 1945. I have a picture of Nina, the artist who painted the watercolor pictures for Dr. Mengele and her mother. This was taken after the war in France. The next picture is my brother and I when I was about 5 years old, and he's about 9 in this picture. There's a picture of my mother and me. Again, I'm about 5 years old in this picture. And here's a picture of my father, the doctor, and this is a picture of me about 3 months after the war, after returning to Prague. Okay, so this is the end of the story, and perhaps you have some questions or you have something that needs to be explained. What was the question?
Can you remember the moment when you got free?
Oh.
You escaped, survived.
Yes, I remember the first American soldier coming in. First I heard some machine gun fire early in the morning on the 4th of May. Then I remember 3 or 4 of the German guards standing together and holding up a white sheet. And then shortly after, I realized that these guards were more or less giving themselves up. About 5 minutes later, I saw the first American soldier. So I was very happy at that point.
Welche Strategie wenden Sie an, um zu überleben? Haben Sie eine Häftlingsnummer eintätowiert?
Which strategy did you use to survive, and have you got a prisoner's number?
What was the first question about surviving?
What was your strategy of surviving?
My strategy of surviving was mostly psychological. I was doing, when things were really difficult, I was doing a lot of daydreaming. And I would dream about being with my parents and sitting at home at the dinner table with my parents and having a dinner with them. And so I was doing a lot of fantasizing and visualizing.
Wie haben Sie einander kennengelernt? Wie ist Ihre Freundschaft entstanden? War das in Amerika oder in Österreich?
It was in the camps beginning in Auschwitz, and then we got even closer in Mauthausen and Melk and Gunskirchen.
Ich bin persönlich überzeugt, dass es wirklich nur großes Glück war, zu überleben. Und ich wusste schon, dass mein Vater in der Gaskammer getötet war in Auschwitz, aber ich hoffte, dass meine Mutter überlebt werden. Und darum habe ich immer auf sie gedacht und wollte das überleben, als ich wusste, dass die Mutter sehr enttäuscht würde. Sie überlebte und ich war tot.
Noch eine Frage? That's a question for you too. Where do you get your powerful life nowadays, today?
How do I get it?
Yeah.
Well, there was a choice of either living or not living, and living well and living aggressively. So I chose that I must recover from for what I went through and live as normal a life as I possibly could.
Für mich war der Schock, ohne Eltern zu leben. Es hat so 2 oder 3 Jahre gedauert, bis ich to make peace with the fact that I am ein Einzelkind.
Dass er klarkommt damit, dass er ein Einzelkind war.
Und dann habe ich mich überzeugt, dass ich weiterleben muss und allein bleiben wird und dass ich muss, was ich erlebt habe, schreiben, und so habe ich so ein Tagebuch geschrieben, wie gestern veröffentlicht war in der deutschen Sprache in Mauthausen, sodass mehr Menschen wissen, was das Resultat des Zweiten Weltkriegs war, und das ist so, dass es nicht wieder geschieht in unserem Leben.
Herr Kraus, wo und wie haben Sie so zeichnen gelernt?
Das sind wirklich nur Kinderzeichnungen. Das habe ich, wenn ich so ungefähr 15 Jahren war, gezeichnet.
Also wie er 15 war. Ist verständlich die Antwort? Ja.
Die Schülerinnen sind denen gefallen diese Zeichnungen und sie finden es faszinierend, wie genau sie gezeichnet haben. Das Tagebuch Bilder gefallen den Schülerinnen.
Die Schüler sind begeistert, fasziniert von ihren Zeichnungen, weil sie so genau und so schön gezeichnet haben.
Dankeschön.
Michael, I presented the pictures in our workshop. I presented your pictures in the workshop I did in the classroom.
So they also your pictures. Yeah?
Wie schaffen Sie es, über Ihre schrecklichen Erfahrungen zu reden? Darf ich Sie fragen, ob Sie jemals an Selbstmord gedacht haben?
Oh, so that's a double question.
Yeah.
I have done it. I have made this presentation to many children in America. So first time or second time that I did it, it was very difficult. But after a while, I emotionally get adjusted to it. So I'm able to do it without too much struggle. I never considered committing suicide as a child. But towards the end, when we were in Gunskirchen and we didn't have any food or water, I was actually quite concerned that perhaps we may not be able to make it through. So that was my concern, but it was I never thought of committing suicide. It never came into my head.
I have not considered Selbstmord while I was in the concentration camp. And not very seriously after the war either.
Ich bin jetzt so alt wie Sie vor 70 Jahren. Haben Sie einen Appell oder eine Botschaft an uns?
Be very critical of any information that has to do with condemning some large groups of people. So or making judgments too quickly about people, and try to be a good detective before you make up your mind as to who is good and who is bad.
Gibt euch die Botschaft, seid sehr kritisch immer mit den Informationen, was ihr von anderen bekommt. Besonders wenn es um Vorurteile gegenüber anderen Menschen geht. Schaut euch selber mal an, was ist wirklich schlecht und was ist wirklich gut. Ihr seid dazu auch fähig.
I think people should be, especially young people, should be tolerant to races and religions that are different from their own and tolerate the differences and not condemn them because they are different, whether it's because of color, race or political affiliation.
Hatten Sie Zukunftspläne nach dem Krieg?
Well, I knew that my interest was always in art, so I knew that I was going to do something that had to do with design or art. And then after I finished high school, I went to the college in America, and I studied design, industrial design. And so basically I fulfilled my dream of being an artist and a designer, and I ended up designing products for people.
I think my main change in life was when I met my present wife and married her 52 years ago. She's sitting here in the first row, and she has supported me all my life, mentally and in all respects. And we have 4 grandchildren, which is a big dream that I had. And I studied architecture and only retired 4 months ago. So I had a long life of work, which I enjoyed.
Herr Kraus und Herr Grünwald, wir möchten jetzt Danke sagen für die Herzenswärme. Und wir haben einen Künstler unter uns, habe ich gehört, stimmt das? Bei uns in der Schule sind auch so ganz kleine Künstler, die haben eine ganz spezielle Mappe für sie vorbereitet. Und in dieser Mappe sind einige Gedanken und Überlegungen, und die Schüler der 3. und der 4. Klasse möchten jetzt noch ganz persönlich Danke sagen. Zu Nähe und Michael.
They've got also little artists. They've prepared something for you.
Oh.
Yeah, they've prepared
that's wonderful.
a folder for you.
Oh my
with their
goodness.
quotes and drawings.
Sie haben uns viel Trauriges, aber auch Hoffnungsvolles erzählt. Wir finden, dass Sie sehr mutig sind. Als kleines Dank möchten wir Ihnen eine Mappe nach Amerika mitgeben. Es sind Fotos darin, wie wir uns auf diesen Treffen vorbereitet, aber auch verschiedene Gedanken von uns. Die Mappe soll Sie an uns, an die NMS Ansfelden erinnern. Wir vergessen nicht, was bei der Grenzbrücke geschehen ist. Danke, dass Sie uns den Film und das Tagebuch gezeigt haben. Danke, dass Sie bei uns waren.